You have been manipulated today. Not yesterday, not last year, today. And the worst part? You felt it, and you still could not stop it. That is not your fault. That is by design. Section 1. Reframe the battlefield. Most people picture manipulation as something extreme. A con artist, a villain, a sinister plan, something that announces itself the moment it walks through the door. But that picture is wrong, and that wrong picture is exactly why manipulation works as well as it does. Because manipulation does not announce itself. It disguises itself as love, as a concern, as loyalty, as family. The person who has manipulated you most effectively in your life is probably not someone you hate. It is probably someone you defended when others questioned them. Someone you made excuses for without even realizing you were doing it. Someone you still care about. Manipulation is not a stranger at the door. It is someone who already has a key. And here is what makes this even more unsettling. Manipulation has been studied, documented, and refined for centuries. Robert Cialdini, one of the most respected influence researchers in the world, spent years studying compliance professionals, salespeople, advertisers, negotiators. What he found was that human behavior is not as rational as we believe. There are specific psychological triggers that bypass rational thought entirely. And manipulators, whether they have ever read a single page of research or not, discover these triggers instinctively. Because manipulation is not intelligence. It is observation. The manipulator watches how you respond to pressure, how you respond to withdrawal, how you respond to being needed, and then they use what they see. Now here is the part most people miss. We assume we are most vulnerable to strangers, to people we do not know and cannot yet trust. But the research tells a completely different story. We are most vulnerable to the people we already trust, because trust disables our defenses. When someone we love behaves in a way that confuses or hurts us, the last conclusion our brain reaches is, they are manipulating me. The first conclusion is always, what did I do wrong? And that single reflex is where everything begins. Section 2. The root. One mechanism behind everything. Every manipulation tactic ever documented targets one thing. Just one. Your brain's desperate, biological need to resolve contradiction. In 1957, a social psychologist named Leon Festinger introduced the concept of cognitive dissonance. What he found was that when two contradictory beliefs or experiences exist in the mind simultaneously, the brain does not pause to analyze the situation calmly. It panics. It seeks resolution immediately. This is not a flaw. It is a feature. Our brains are wired for coherence because coherence is efficient. Contradiction requires energy to process. But here is what manipulators understand that Festinger also understood. The resolution the brain seeks is not necessarily the true one. It is the comfortable one. Think about it this way. Imagine someone at work. Their manager routinely humiliates them in front of colleagues, takes credit for their work, undermines their confidence in subtle, deliberate ways. But this same manager also vouches for them in hiring meetings, occasionally praises them in public, says in private that they are the most valuable person on the team. Two contradictory realities. The brain cannot hold both without resolution. so it generates 1. Maybe the humiliation is just their management style. Maybe I need to be tougher. Maybe I am misreading the situation. Maybe they do value me, they just express it in ways I do not always understand. Every single one of those explanations makes the person stay. And the manipulator did not generate a single one of them. The victim did it for themselves. This is the mechanism. Not smoke and mirrors, not dark magic. A precise exploitation of the brain's need to feel okay about reality. Now apply that same principle to the people closest to you. The person causing you pain is also the person you love. The brain must resolve that. And it always chooses the resolution that allows you to stay. That gap between what you feel and what you cannot yet face is the door. And every manipulation tactic in existence is a key designed to open it. Section 3. The 6 weapons. How the blueprint deploys. Understanding the mechanism is step 1. Now you need to recognize how it deploys in practice.
There are 6 specific pillars, 6 weapons.
Each one exploits the same core mechanism but from a different angle. And here is what you need to understand before we go through them. These are not random behaviors, they are a system. And systems, once you can map them, lose their power. Pillar 1. Intermittent reinforcement. In the 1950s, behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner ran a series of experiments that permanently changed our understanding of addiction. He placed rats in boxes with levers. Some levers gave a reward every single time. Others gave a reward only sometimes, unpredictably. The rats who received unpredictable rewards pressed the lever obsessively, compulsively, far more than the rats who received consistent rewards. Skinner called this variable ratio reinforcement. You know it as a slot machine, and you have very likely experienced it in a relationship. Warmth, then coldness. Affection, then withdrawal. Praise, then silence. The unpredictability does not push you away, it chains you in place. Because your brain, desperate to return to the reward state, will work harder, give more, accept worse treatment, just to get back to the moment that felt safe. And here is the part that most people do not expect. Intermittent reinforcement is more psychologically powerful than consistent abuse. Because consistent abuse teaches the brain to expect pain. The brain can prepare for that. It can detach. But unpredictable warmth keeps you waiting. It keeps you hoping. It keeps you working to return to the moment that felt good. And while you are focused on getting back to that moment, you are not focused on leaving. That is not a weakness. That is the predictable output of a psychological mechanism that evolved over millions of years. Pillar 2. Identity erosion. There is a well-known analogy about a frog placed in cold water. If you heat the water slowly enough, the frog never notices the danger until it is too late. Identity erosion works exactly like that. It is not a single moment of devastation. It is a slow, patient campaign. A comment about how you overreact. A joke at your expense in front of others. A comparison to someone who does things differently, more agreeably, more easily. Subtle, persistent, deliberate. And over months or years, something shifts. You stop trusting your own instincts. You start filtering your thoughts through their approval before you even express them. At that point, you are not accepting their influence anymore. You are outsourcing your identity to them. This is precisely how cult leaders operate. Before they introduce doctrine, they introduce doubt. Doubt in the recruit's previous beliefs, their family, their sense of self. The doctrine fills the vacuum that the doubt creates. In a one-on-one relationship, the manipulator does the same thing. They create the vacuum, and then they fill it with their version of who you should be. Pillar 3. Manufactured urgency. Manipulation cannot survive patience. This is not an opinion. This is a neurological fact. When you feel pressured, your brain releases cortisol. The stress response shuts down access to your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term thinking, rational evaluation, saying no with confidence. Under pressure, you are operating from a more primitive part of your brain, a part that responds to immediate threat, not future consequences. Manipulators trigger that pressure deliberately. If you do not decide now, I am walking away. Everyone else would have already agreed. I cannot believe you still need time to think about this. These are not expressions of genuine urgency. They are manufactured crises designed to take your thinking brain offline. Consider high-pressure sales environments. Why does the offer only exist today? Why is the price dropping if you sign in the next 10 minutes? Why can you not sleep on it and come back tomorrow? Because the sales room knows that given time to think, most people would choose differently. Urgency is the weapon. Patience is the antidote. And the manipulator in your life will always try to take the antidote out of your hands. Pillar 4. Social proof weaponization. In 1951, psychologist Solomon Asch ran what would become one of the most disturbing experiments in the history of social science. He placed participants in a room with actors and showed them lines of different lengths. The task was simple. Identify which lines were the same length. The actors gave obviously wrong answers. And in a remarkable number of cases, the real participants agreed with the wrong answer rather than trust what they were clearly seeing with their own eyes. Social consensus overrode direct perceptual evidence. Now think about what that means inside a manipulation dynamic. Everyone agrees with me on this. All your friends can see how you are behaving. Even your own family has noticed. Whether those statements are true or not is completely irrelevant. The psychological weight of being told that you are alone in your perception is enough to make most people abandon that perception entirely. This is amplified when the manipulator has already worked to isolate you, because isolation removes the contradicting voices. It removes the people who might say, actually, that is not what happened. When your only social input comes from the person manipulating you, their version of reality becomes the only version available. That is not an accident. That is architecture. Pillar 5. Guilt as currency. Genuine guilt is a signal. It tells you that your actions have drifted from your values. It exists to prompt correction. Manufactured guilt is something entirely different. It is a debt that was placed on you without your consent for something you did not choose in service of someone else's agenda. After everything I have done for you, I gave up everything, and this is what I receive in return. You always find a way to make this about yourself. The debt is invented. The obligation is fabricated. The ledger does not exist, but you will work to pay it down anyway, because that is what guilt does to the human nervous system. And here is something most people never consider. This dynamic frequently begins in childhood. Children who are made to feel responsible for a parent's emotional state, a parent's happiness, or a parent's stability grow up with a guilt reflex that has been hardwired since before they had the language to question it. They did not choose it. They were trained into it. And that reflex, decades later, makes them exquisitely vulnerable to anyone who knows how to activate it on demand. You feel responsible for things that are not your responsibility. And someone in your life knows exactly how to press that button. Pillar 6. Gaslighting. In 1944, a film called Gaslight told the story of a man who systematically manipulated his wife into believing she was losing her mind. He dimmed the gas lights in the house and denied that the light had changed. He moved objects and told her she had moved them herself. He isolated her and told her no one would believe her. The term gaslighting comes from that film, but what it describes is far older than cinema. Gaslighting is the most sophisticated manipulation weapon because it targets the instrument of perception itself. Not your actions, not your feelings. Your ability to trust what you experience. That never happened. You are imagining things again. You are far too sensitive. This is just who you are. And over time, the victim stops reporting what they see, what they hear, what they feel. Because the report has been invalidated so many times, they have stopped trusting the reporter. The silence that follows is not peace, it is surrender. And here is something worth sitting with. Gaslighting is not limited to personal relationships. Institutions gaslight. Systems gaslight. Entire governments gaslight. Medical professionals dismiss symptoms they cannot explain. Systems deny their own failures. Institutions quietly rewrite their own histories. Once you see this mechanism operating at the interpersonal level, you begin to see its fingerprints everywhere. And a person who cannot trust their own mind is the easiest person in the world to control. Section 4. The Paradox. Why the smartest people fall hardest. Now here is the part of this video that most people are not prepared for. The people most vulnerable to these 6 pillars are not the naive, not the uneducated, not the emotionally fragile. The most vulnerable people are often the most intelligent, most empathic, most high-achieving individuals in the room. And this is not a coincidence. In 2019, the Better Business Bureau released research showing that people with higher levels of education were more likely to fall victim to financial scams. Not less, more. The reason is counterintuitive. Intelligence does not reduce susceptibility to manipulation. In many cases, it increases it. Because intelligent people are better rationalizers. They can construct more sophisticated explanations for why the painful thing makes sense, why the inexcusable is worth excusing, why the person hurting them must, at some deeper level, have good intentions. They do the manipulator's cognitive work for them, better than the manipulator ever could. There is a second reason. Empathic people, the ones who feel deeply, who care about others, who are naturally oriented toward understanding rather than judgment, make exceptionally easy targets. Because empathy turned against you means you are always trying to see the other person's perspective, even when that perspective is being used to harm you. You extend understanding that is never extended back. You offer context that is never offered in return. And you stay long past the point when the less empathic person would have already left. There is a third reason. High achievers carry belief systems that sound like virtues right up until someone turns them into weapons. Resilience becomes, stay in situations that are destroying you. Love becomes, sacrifice yourself without limit. Strength becomes never show weakness, never ask for help, never admit that it is breaking you. These are not flaws. They are qualities that build everything you are. But in the wrong hands, they become a map. And the wrong person will read that map very carefully. Now I want to ask you something, not rhetorically. Actually sit with this for a moment. Is there a situation in your life right now where you are using your intelligence to explain away someone else's behavior? Where is your empathy being mistaken for permission? Where is your strength being used as an excuse to keep hurting you? If the answer is yes, then this video was never just educational. It was something you specifically needed to hear. And you already knew that. That is why you are still here. Section 5. The Protocol. 4 steps that disarm it. Awareness without action is just well-informed suffering. So here is the protocol. 4 steps. Each one was grounded in the same psychology the manipulator uses, turned against them. Step 1. Name it silently. Not out loud, not to them, only to yourself. This is intermittent reinforcement. My nervous system is responding to a reward cycle, not to reality. This is manufactured urgency. My prefrontal cortex is being deliberately bypassed. The act of naming the mechanism interrupts the automatic response. When you name what is happening, you are no longer inside the experience. You are observing it. That shift from inside to outside is where your power begins to return. Slightly at first. Slightly is enough. Step 2. Weaponize time. Manufactured urgency requires your cooperation to function. Refuse to give it. I need time to think about this. 9 words. Not weakness, not passivity. The single most powerful thing you can say inside a manipulation dynamic, because it returns the one variable the manipulator needs to control: your reaction speed. Take the time. Let the urgency expire. Watch what happens to the situation when you stop responding at the speed they require. The answer is always revealing. Step 3. Externalize your memory. Gaslighting works by making you distrust your own record of events. So externalize the record. Write things down. Date them. Not as evidence for anyone else, as anchors for yourself. When someone tells you that something never happened, you need to be able to return to a record that cannot be rewritten by anyone else. Your perception is not the problem. It simply needs a backup that exists outside of your own memory. And that backup changes everything. Step 4. Stop auditing yourself on their behalf. Every time you ask yourself, what did I do wrong after an interaction that felt wrong, you are doing their work for them. The manipulator wins not just by distorting reality, but by training you to distort it yourself. Stop investigating yourself. Start observing them. Watch the pattern, the timing, the triggers, the consistency of behavior across different situations. The pattern becomes visible very quickly, and once you see it, it cannot be unseen. There is one more thing worth knowing here. Some people who recognize these patterns will want to confront the manipulator directly with what they have learned. This rarely produces the result they are hoping for. The manipulator does not respond to exposure the way a reasonable person would. What tends to work more effectively is quiet withdrawal, not dramatic exits, not explanations, simply removing your energy from the dynamic. becoming, in the language of psychology, a gray rock. Uninteresting, unresponsive, unremarkable. The manipulator is fueled by your reaction. Remove the reaction, remove the fuel, and watch how quickly everything changes. Section 6. The closing truth. Manipulation is not magic. It is not a supernatural ability that certain people are born with. It is a blueprint, precise, documented, reproducible. And blueprints, once you can read them, lose all of their power. The confusion you felt was not weakness. The guilt was not a character defect. The exhaustion, the second guessing, the way you found yourself apologizing for things you did not do. These are not signs that something is wrong with you. They are the predictable, documented results of a specific set of psychological tools being applied to a person who was never given the vocabulary to name them. No one taught you this until now. And here is what changes from this moment forward. Not everything, not overnight, but something fundamental shifts when you understand a system at its root level. You will be in a conversation and feel the pressure of manufactured urgency. And instead of reacting, you will name it. You will notice the coldness after the warmth, and you will know exactly what the pattern is called. You will feel the pull of guilt, and you will ask yourself, is this mine, or was this placed here? That is not a small thing. That is the difference between living inside a system and being able to see it from the outside. Once you see clearly, you do not go back. That is not dramatic. That is irreversible. If this is the kind of psychology they do not teach you in school, subscribe, because this is only the beginning.